Here's the expanded first segment in a polished, ready-to-use format. There is a strange paradox that most people never notice. We grow up believing that influence belongs to the loudest voice in the room. We are encouraged to speak up, explain ourselves, defend every decision, and make sure everyone understands our intentions. We begin to associate constant talking with confidence and silence with weakness. Yet if you observe the people who truly possess authority, those who naturally command attention without demanding it, you will notice something entirely different. They are rarely in a hurry to speak. They are comfortable allowing silence to exist. They choose their words carefully because they understand a principle that human psychology has never abandoned. People value what appears deliberate far more than what appears abundant. Words are like currency. The more recklessly you spend them, the less valuable they become. Imagine someone who comments on everything, offers opinions before anyone asks, explains every decision, reveals every emotion, and fills every uncomfortable pause with conversation. At first, they may seem open and engaging, but over time, people begin to overlook their voice. Familiarity removes mystery, and mystery has always been one of the foundations of influence. Human beings are naturally drawn toward what they cannot fully explain. When someone reveals everything, there is nothing left to discover. Curiosity disappears, respect often follows it out the door, but when someone speaks only when necessary, every sentence carries greater weight. People begin listening more carefully because they know those words were not offered casually. This is not manipulation. It is an understanding of human attention. Our minds are designed to search for missing information. Psychologists call this the tendency to seek closure. Whenever something remains unsaid, the mind instinctively tries to complete the picture. Silence invites imagination, and imagination is often far more powerful than explanation. Consider two individuals entering the same meeting. The first immediately dominates the conversation, explaining every accomplishment, offering solutions before anyone finishes speaking, and constantly proving their intelligence. The second listens. They observe facial expressions, notice shifts in tone, identify who carries real influence in the room, and wait. When they finally speak, their words are concise and purposeful. Hours later, people often remember the second person far more vividly than the first. Why? Because restraint creates significance. There is another reason silence carries power. Every unnecessary word reveals information. When we speak impulsively, we expose our insecurities, frustrations, ambitions, fears, and emotional state without realizing it. We reveal what excites us, what threatens us, and where our weaknesses lie. Most people are so focused on expressing themselves that they forget others are quietly collecting information. Observe skilled negotiators, observe experienced leaders, observe people who consistently navigate conflict successfully. They rarely reveal everything they know. They rarely react immediately. Instead, they allow others to continue talking. And something remarkable happens. The other person begins revealing more than they intended. Silence creates space, and people are uncomfortable with empty space. In conversations, silence often feels awkward. Most individuals rush to eliminate that discomfort by talking. They explain more than necessary. They justify themselves. They volunteer information that was never requested. The patient observer simply waits. Eventually, the silence becomes an invisible invitation for the other person to fill it. This is why silence is not the absence of communication. It is one of its strongest forms. But mastering silence is not merely about influencing others. It is first about mastering yourself. Think about how often you speak because of emotion rather than intention. Someone criticizes you and you immediately defend yourself. Someone misunderstands your motives and you rush to explain. Someone insults you and you feel compelled to respond. In each of these moments, the words are not serving your purpose. They are serving your emotions. Emotional reactions create temporary relief, but lasting consequences. Every impulsive sentence gives your emotions control over your actions. Every unnecessary explanation places your peace in someone else's hands. The person who cannot tolerate silence often cannot tolerate uncertainty either. They need immediate validation. They need others to understand them instantly, yet genuine confidence operates differently. Confidence does not demand constant recognition. Confidence does not chase approval. Confidence does not panic when misunderstood. A truly confident person understands that not every accusation deserves a defense, not every opinion deserves a response, and not every conflict deserves participation. There is immense freedom in accepting that you do not need to explain yourself to everyone. Many people waste years attempting to control how others perceive them. They clarify every decision, defend every choice, justify every failure, and explain every success. Ironically, this constant need for explanation often produces the opposite effect. The more desperately someone tries to control perception, the less authentic they appear. Silence communicates certainty. It quietly says, I trust my actions more than my explanations. History repeatedly demonstrates that authority is rarely established through endless speech. Great commanders, judges, diplomats, and leaders often understood that words lose force when overused. A carefully timed pause can redirect an entire conversation. A measured response can dissolve conflict that endless argument only intensifies. There is wisdom in allowing people to underestimate you. The loud individual often announces every intention before acting. The disciplined individual acts first and allows results to speak afterward. This approach not only protects your plans, but also preserves your energy. Every unnecessary conversation consumes mental attention that could have been invested in preparation. Think about how many dreams disappear because they were discussed too early. A person shares a goal with everyone around them before taking meaningful action. They receive praise simply for having an idea, and that praise creates a false sense of accomplishment. Gradually, the desire to achieve weakens because the emotional reward has already been received. Silence protects ambition. It allows your efforts to mature away from distraction, criticism, and premature judgment. Perhaps the greatest lesson silence teaches is patience. It reminds us that influence is rarely built in moments of urgency. It is built through consistency, observation, and deliberate action. The person who speaks less is not withholding because they lack ideas. They are choosing quality over quantity, intention over impulse, and wisdom over noise. In a world that rewards constant broadcasting, silence becomes a rare form of strength. It allows you to observe what others overlook, preserve what others expose, and command attention without demanding it. The quieter you become inside, the more powerful your presence becomes outside. Remember this: the strongest voice in the room is often the one that never needs to compete with the noise. This segment is designed to transition naturally into the next key point on speaking with precision and using words strategically. Here's the expanded second segment in a polished, ready-to-use format. Once you begin to understand that silence creates power, another realization naturally follows. Silence alone is not enough. There are moments when you must speak. The question is no longer asterisk whether asterisk you should use words, but asterisk how asterisk. This is where many people lose the advantage they gained through restraint. They speak simply because it is their turn to speak. They mistake participation for influence, yet influence has never been measured by the number of words you use. It has always been measured by the effect those words leave behind. Every conversation is, in a subtle way, a negotiation. Whether you are speaking with a friend, a colleague, a stranger, or someone you love, You are constantly shaping how others perceive you. Your words reveal not only your thoughts, but your discipline, your priorities, and your emotional state. They become evidence from which people draw conclusions about your character. This is why careless speech carries a hidden cost. Every unnecessary sentence increases the chance of being misunderstood, misquoted, or used against you. Most people underestimate this because they believe honesty requires complete transparency, but wisdom is not the same as constant disclosure. There is a profound difference between being truthful and revealing everything. A wise person understands that not every thought deserves to become a sentence. Some ideas need time to mature, some emotions need to settle before they are expressed, and some victories are strongest when they remain private until they have become undeniable. Think about how often people sabotage themselves by speaking too soon. They announce ambitious plans before they have taken meaningful action. They describe every strategy to anyone willing to listen. They share every frustration the moment it appears. In doing so, they surrender something valuable, control over their own narrative. The moment your intentions become public, they become open to judgment, criticism, and interference. Some people will discourage you out of genuine concern. Others will do it because your ambition quietly threatens their comfort. A few may even imitate your ideas before you have the opportunity to develop them. None of this happens because you lacked talent. It happens because your words arrived before your results. This is why disciplined people often appear unusually reserved. They understand that results speak with a certainty that explanations never can. There is another subtle danger in speaking excessively. The more you explain yourself, the more opportunities you create for disagreement. Imagine someone making a simple point. Instead of stopping there, they continue talking, adding qualifications, examples, and unnecessary details. Ironically, each additional sentence weakens the original message. People stop focusing on the central idea and begin examining the smaller details. They question wording instead of understanding meaning. Precision prevents this. The most persuasive communicators rarely overwhelm their audience with information. They select a few essential ideas and deliver them with clarity. Their confidence allows them to stop speaking before their words lose their strength. They understand that people remember concise truths far longer than lengthy explanations. Notice how often powerful statements are surprisingly brief. A single sentence delivered with conviction often carries greater emotional weight than a 10-minute explanation. This is because the human mind naturally remembers what is simple. Complexity may impress temporarily, but clarity endures. Learning to speak precisely also requires learning to ask better questions. This may seem unexpected, yet some of the most influential people spend less time offering opinions than inviting others to speak. Questions accomplish two remarkable things at once. First, they reveal information you would never discover by talking. Second, they make people feel understood. People are naturally drawn toward those who genuinely listen. In fact, many conversations that people describe as enjoyable involve surprisingly little talking from the person they admire. What they remember is not the advice they received, but the feeling that someone truly paid attention. Listening, therefore, is not passive. It is an active form of intelligence. When you ask thoughtful questions, you begin seeing beyond appearances. You discover motivations hidden beneath words. You notice contradictions between what people say and what they actually believe. You become less concerned with preparing your next response and more interested in understanding reality as it truly is. This shift changes everything. Instead of entering conversations determined to prove your intelligence, you enter them determined to expand it. That mindset quietly transforms your relationships, your leadership, and your judgment. There is also tremendous power in timing. Even the right words can lose their impact when spoken at the wrong moment. Most people react immediately because urgency feels satisfying. But wisdom often asks for patience. A pause before responding is rarely a sign of uncertainty. More often, it is evidence of control. Consider how conflicts escalate. One harsh comment invites another. A defensive explanation triggers further accusations. Each side becomes more interested in winning than understanding. Yet occasionally, one person refuses to react immediately. They pause, they think, they allow emotion to settle before choosing their response. That single moment of restraint often changes the entire direction of the conversation. Words chosen after reflection usually solve problems that impulsive words only multiply. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionally distant. It means refusing to let temporary emotions dictate permanent consequences. One of the most valuable habits you can develop is asking yourself a simple question before speaking. Asterisk, does this need to be said? Asterisk, if the answer is yes, ask another question. Asterisk, does it need to be said by me? Asterisk, if the answer remains yes, ask one final question. Asterisk, does it need to be said right now? Asterisk, these three questions eliminate countless unnecessary conflicts, regrets, and misunderstandings. They force intention into a place where impulse once ruled. Gradually, your words begin carrying greater authority because people recognize that you do not speak carelessly. When you offer praise, it feels sincere. When you offer criticism, it feels measured. When you make a promise, people believe you. Your reputation becomes rooted not in constant communication, but in reliable communication. That is one of the rarest forms of influence. In an age where opinions are shared instantly and endlessly, thoughtful speech has become uncommon. And because it is uncommon, it has become extraordinarily valuable. Every word you choose either strengthens your credibility or weakens it. Every unnecessary explanation either clouds your purpose or sharpens it. The goal is not to speak less for the sake of silence alone. The goal is to ensure that when your voice enters the conversation, it changes the conversation. Speak only after your thoughts have become clear enough to deserve a voice, because words gain their greatest power not from their quantity, but from their precision. This segment transitions naturally into the final key point, where the focus shifts inward, from mastering silence in conversation to mastering the mind itself through emotional discipline and self-control. Here's the expanded final segment, written to conclude the speech in a cohesive and impactful way. If silence gives you presence and precise words give you influence, then there is one final lesson that brings both together. It is the lesson that most people overlook because it cannot be seen from the outside. The greatest form of silence is not what happens with your mouth. It is what happens within your mind. Most people imagine self-control as the ability to stay calm under pressure. But true inner discipline goes much deeper than that. It is the ability to remain untouched by impulses that demand an immediate reaction. It is the quiet strength to separate what you feel from what you choose to do. This distinction may seem small, but it is the foundation upon which lasting influence is built. Think about how much of modern life is designed to provoke instant responses. A message arrives, and you feel compelled to reply immediately. Someone criticizes your work, and your first instinct is to defend yourself. You see another person's success, and comparison begins before you even realize it. Every day, countless situations compete for your emotional attention, urging you to react without reflection. The person who cannot resist these impulses lives as though every external event controls their inner world. Their emotions become a puppet whose strings are pulled by circumstance. Praise lifts them higher than it should. Criticism crushes them more deeply than it deserves. Every disagreement feels personal. Every misunderstanding feels like an emergency. But the truly disciplined individual understands something profoundly different. They recognize that between every event and every response lies a moment of choice. That moment is invisible, yet it determines the direction of an entire life. Most people surrender that moment without realizing it. Inner silence begins when you reclaim it. This does not mean suppressing emotion. Emotions contain valuable information. Fear may warn you of genuine danger. Anger may reveal that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness may remind you of something meaningful. The mistake is not feeling these emotions. The mistake is allowing them to become your decision makers. Imagine trying to navigate a ship during a violent storm. The waves are powerful, the wind unpredictable, and the horizon almost invisible. If the captain steers according to every wave, the ship will never reach its destination. The waves are real, but they are not meant to become the compass. Your emotions are much the same. You acknowledge them without allowing them to determine your direction. This is why some people appear remarkably composed in situations that overwhelm everyone else. It is not because they experience fewer emotions. It is because they have trained themselves to pause before acting. That pause, however brief, gives reason enough time to catch up with feeling. Over years, this habit quietly transforms a person's character. Instead of reacting, they observe. Instead of assuming, they investigate. Instead of chasing immediate satisfaction, they consider long-term consequences. These choices accumulate in ways that are almost invisible at first. But eventually, they create a person whose presence feels different. They do not seem hurried by life. They are difficult to provoke. They do not waste energy on arguments that produce no value. They choose their battles carefully because they understand that attention is one of the most valuable resources they possess. Where attention goes, life follows. Most people spend enormous amounts of mental energy thinking about things they cannot control, other people's opinions, imagined conversations, past mistakes, future fears. Their minds become crowded with noise. Ironically, even when they are physically silent, they remain internally restless. Inner silence asks for something else. It asks you to become an observer of your own thoughts rather than their servant. Notice how often your mind creates stories without evidence. Someone fails to return a message, and you imagine rejection. A colleague appears distant, and you assume resentment. A single setback convinces you that failure is inevitable. Rarely do these conclusions reflect reality. They reflect the mind's tendency to fill uncertainty with fiction. The disciplined individual learns to question these stories instead of obeying them. This simple habit creates extraordinary freedom. When you stop believing every thought, you stop becoming imprisoned by every emotion attached to it. There is another quiet advantage that emerges from inner discipline, the ability to see people clearly. Most misunderstandings occur because we observe others through the lens of our own emotional state. When angry, we interpret neutral actions as hostile. When insecure, we assume criticism where none exists. When impatient, we overlook details that would have changed our understanding completely. A calm mind removes these distortions. Instead of projecting your emotions onto reality, you begin seeing reality with greater accuracy. This alone improves every relationship you have. You become slower to judge, quicker to understand, and less interested in winning arguments than discovering truth. People begin trusting you because they sense that you are responding to them, not merely reacting to your own assumptions. That kind of trust cannot be manufactured. It is earned through consistent emotional discipline. There is also a deeper reward that has nothing to do with influence over others. Eventually, silence becomes a source of peace. Many people spend their lives searching for confidence in achievements, recognition, or approval. They believe peace will arrive once they accomplish enough, earn enough, or impress enough people. Yet these pursuits never fully satisfy because they depend on circumstances that constantly change. Real confidence grows from something far more stable. It grows from knowing that your mind belongs to you. It grows from realizing that another person's opinion does not determine your worth. It grows from understanding that you no longer need to respond to every invitation into conflict. That freedom is difficult to describe until it is experienced. You begin speaking because your words have purpose, not because silence feels uncomfortable. You begin listening without secretly preparing your reply. You become comfortable allowing others to underestimate you, while your actions quietly build undeniable results. Over time, people notice something they cannot easily explain. Your presence feels grounded. Your decisions appear thoughtful. Your confidence no longer depends on being the loudest, the fastest, or the most visible person in the room. It comes from a deeper place, a mind that is no longer ruled by impulse, and perhaps that is the greatest achievement of all. Mastering the art of saying less is not about becoming silent for its own sake. It is about creating enough space between thought and action that wisdom has a chance to speak. The fewer unnecessary words you release into the world, the more carefully you guard your attention, your energy, and your purpose. You begin to realize that power is not found in dominating every conversation. It is found in mastering yourself before you ever attempt to influence anyone else. So, the next time you feel the urge to explain, defend, interrupt, or react, pause for just a moment. Let silence do its quiet work. Observe before you answer, think before you speak, choose before you act. Because the person who masters their words may influence a conversation, but the person who masters their own mind shapes the course of their entire life.